It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Klara Richman. Your maiden name was Simon, and you were born in Eisenstadt.
Right.
Which was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Yes, it was. It was near the castle, Esterhazy. Near Esterhazy, it was the Jewish street. We had a chain across, but these things I don't remember because my mother took me to Hungary. She thought she's on her own in Eisenstadt. My aunt and uncle had already gone to England.
And your father?
And my father went to England and he sent documents, and Hitler would not let the train leave Vienna. We were in Vienna already at an aunt of my father's, an old lady, Auntie Fanny. I just vaguely remember her. And I had another uncle who's not on the picture, Uncle Moritz. He also went to Israel from Eisenstadt.
When were you born?
I was born 1936, December 1936, and my father left in 38. So I was 2.
And you have a beautiful picture of your family.
Yes.
From Eisenstadt.
Yes.
So, Claire, if you could show us where who's in the picture.
This is my father, and this is my mother. I'm not in the pram, it's my cousin. This is my Auntie Lena, my mother's sister, and this is Uncle Ludwig Lajos, my father's brother. And so 2 brothers married 2 sisters. Good. And this is my father's sister, Auntie Gizzy, who went to America after the war. But she was in London during the war.
And your mother's...
This is my mother. Where is she? Yes, it's my mother. And she had the little one, Erica, my cousin, in the pram.
And you have a beautiful picture of your father.
Yes, that was before he left. Before he left Eisenstadt to go to England, and he sent all the documents, and Hitler wouldn't let the train out. So my mother took me in a rucksack on her back. I was 2, to Hungary. And my grandfather was from Sárvár in Hungary. He was deported. He was a cripple, but he was with crutches, but he was deported. But my mother had a few sisters in Budapest. And that's how we landed up in Budapest.
Now you also have a picture of the house where you were born.
Yes. I will show you the house where I was here.
It's amazing that you have...
Yes.
Do you have any, I know you were very small, but do you have any recollections of the house?
No. Oh, only when I went back with my husband. I went back and we went to the Jewish Museum, which was in Judengasse in Eisenstadt, and the curator said, please don't take pictures because they'll think you've come to collect the house. We had 1 room, you know.
So this picture of your house was taken in 1937.
Yes.
It's an amazing picture that. And then the other picture is a picture of the ghetto.
Yes. Look, with the chain across. For Shabbat, nobody went.
They had a chain.
A chain across, which was put so the wagons couldn't come on Shabbat.
And can I ask, Claire, your parents, were they many generations in Eisenstadt?
My father, maybe, I don't know. But yes, because his parents were buried. I saw the graves in the cemetery in Eisenstadt. They had 2 cemeteries, an old one, and then my husband and I cleaned one or two gravestones that they had ivy growing there, and we found Klara, who I'm named after, Klara Simon, and Max Simon, who was my grandfather. So we found the graves, but they died before the war.
And on your mother's side?
My mother's side, my grandmother died quite young. She had 11 children, she was tired. And my grandfather, he was deported, and we didn't see him after that. I only saw him once. Shame, it was a shame. But this is, I had a good war in as much as I couldn't remember, but my mother was a very brave lady.
So can I just ask, your father, did he decide to go to England to try and bring the family?
Yes, because my aunt and uncle, that's Ernest and Kurt's father, my aunt and uncle went as housekeepers to England.
This is Kurt.
That's Kurt, he's a doctor, and this is Ernest. Ernest was very instrumental in talking about the Holocaust, and that's why he got the BEM. He spoke to hundreds of children about it.
And they left before the Shoah?
Before the Shoah, but they left when Ernest went with Kindertransport. That's Ernest, my aunt and uncle let him, and Kurt came to Israel to, where did they go? Wait a minute. Went to England, Kurt, with my aunt and uncle. And aunt and uncle were employed as domestics. And then eventually they got a house and they had lodgers, a lot of foreign boys, boys from the hostel. And Ernest lived in the hostel for a while. There was a hostel in Leeds, and he lived there for a while. But everybody else, I came when I was, how old was I? My father got hold of us through the Red Cross, and we flew Pan American.
That was after the war?
After the war, straight after the war.
So do you, I'm sure you don't remember, but when your father went to England...
Yes.
And was it only you and your mother that were left? Did you have any siblings at
Nobody.
this time?
No, but I was the only child. And but my mother was a very brave lady. She took a job, she had me little girl, as a housekeeper in Budapest.
Now, how did she get to Budapest?
How did she get? She must have, I don't know, maybe by bus or something.
And she took you in a rucksack?
Yes.
How old were you when you went?
To Budapest, I was 2.5. But in Budapest, where she was a housekeeper, the people were very kind. They were rich, not dati.
Were they were Jewish?
Jewish, yes. Afterwards, they became Geschmack. But anyway, it's a long story.
Do you know the name of the family?
Oh, yes, the name was Fehir, and we lived in Budapest on the 3rd floor in Kozinci Utca, not far from the Dohány Utca Shul.
So this is the part of
Budapest that I remember.
And what is your first recollections of Budapest, or what you remember?
I met my auntie. I had another aunt, my mother's sister, called Gizzy, and I met her. And my other auntie, Reggie, had a husband. Her first husband was called Oscar, and he was very kind to me. They looked after me. And the Fehirs where we lived, they were wonderful people. But I can tell you, it's hours long, the story, but eventually they went to Australia because he had a brother there. He was a bank manager. had a brother there. But then they came to visit us, and it was in England. It was lovely. I was already married, you know, and that was it. But I must tell you about Eisenstadt. I went to the shul there, and it was somebody called Wertheimer. He was the ganze I think it was his house. I went with my husband. He was a ganze Kaplischmacher, and in the shul there was a board, and it said on it, "Ich hab da gesetzen Bela Schlesinger," and Schlesingers were from Vienna, and I knew them very well. I remembered the old people. The old people were in Hungary, and then they went to England. But very nice people, Schlesinger. And this was the story.
So Claire, you know the Rosh Yeshiva of here in Beit Vegan.
Yes.
Is Schlesinger.
It's Schlesinger. I wonder what relation, I don't know. But this
Koltora, the
Schlesinger...
Yeshiva at Koltora.
Yeah.
The Rosh Yeshiva is Schlesinger.
Well, this fellow Schlesinger was a butcher. He had a butcher shop. I think my father may have worked there for a while. And he, Schlesinger and Mrs. used to make tzitzis. Yes, that I remember. But...
and when you got to Budapest...
Yes.
And you went with your do you remember any part of the journey or...
No.
And what is... Okay, and being in the house, it was you and your mother?
Yes.
Did the family have other children that you could...
The Fahirs had no children. They were married, but they didn't want children in the war. And the mother, what was her name, Morjani Tetchi, she lived with them, but they, Paul Fahir was a manager in a bank, but I think, you know, he was probably dismissed. And she used to run, they had downstairs in the basement, they had a firm making central heating, and that I remember. They had a fabulous flat on the 3rd floor, and I lived there, but I went to a Jewish school. My mother, Aleha Shalom, sent me to a Jewish school in, I've forgotten the name of the street. Oh.
And the name of the school?
I don't remember, but the nursery nurse had a shaitel. First time I'd seen a shaitel, because my grandmother in Eisenstadt wore a shaitel. That I saw pictures. I don't know. I've got pictures somewhere, big ones, and I think it's behind a wardrobe somewhere. Anyway, but I went to a Jewish school. I didn't learn very much, but we had, you know, singing and so on, and it was good. It wasn't far from Kozinci Utsa.
And how old were you when you went to school?
I must have been 4. It was nursery first. I must have been 4.
And you made friends with the other
with the children. There were a few children there. I had a picture once. I don't know where everything is, because I moved so many times now. This is my home for the time being. We went out on outings from the school, the nursery, and it was very good. And I learnt a few brachot, you know, because they were dati, and my mother was delighted, and that I remember. But then we had to go to the ghetto. This Kozinci Utsa was very near the ghetto, and we lived there. And we lived in my mother used to bring food for my aunt in the ghetto. My aunt was on her own with a boy, he's dead as well, Nebach. And what else?
But this was near the end of the war that
Yes.
you had to go to the ghetto.
We had to go, but towards the very end, we went into hiding in outer Budapest. It was a blind school in Hungary, Körút, in the outer part of Budapest.
Do you remember the ghetto? Do you remember being in the ghetto?
Yes, I remember. We went to queue for food in the joint used to send food parcels, and my mother and I went, and they if you please, they gave us bacon. Tins of bacon. We didn't know, we didn't know the difference, but we queued there, and I remember the corridor where we were queuing. Forgotten the name of the place.
And the where you were staying?
Yes,
was
the
there
Payers family.
But when you went to the ghetto,
Yes.
do you remember leaving the home and going to the ghetto?
Yes, we went to the ghetto, and we went straight into, it was the last year before the Russians came, we went straight into the cellar, and we lived there. A lot of people from the ghetto, we had false papers, but we went and we lived in this ghetto maybe for 6 months. But I was already, then I must have been 5, 6.
And did you have enough food, or do you remember being hungry?
No, I was never hungry. Whilst I had my mother, Alaiha Shalom, I was never hungry, and nobody else was, because my mother and Mrs. Fahir, Auntie Vera, used to rob their warehouses that were bombed. They used to go, they brought sacks of beans and peas, and it was so, we weren't short of anything. We could have had horse meat, but we didn't have, we didn't. And I tell you what else I remember. Before we went to the ghetto, my mother was taken away. She was taken to, they rounded up the women, and I was left, and I was put in a Red Cross home. They rounded up the women, they put them in a lorry to go to Auschwitz.
Now, who rounded up? Was it the Arrow Cross or
Yes, Arrow Cross.
It was the Hungarians?
Yes.
Not the Germans?
No. And they
Do
came.
you remember seeing the Arrow Cross? Did
Yes.
you remember seeing these Hungarian
Yes,
fascists?
I did. I remembered. And I remembered, I didn't actually see my mother going in the lorry, but she told me afterwards, but she knew what to do. She had some soap, and she put a gold watch and a bracelet, gold bracelet, and in the lorry she gave to the guard, and he looked the other way, and she jumped, and she came back to Budapest. No, she hadn't got to Auschwitz yet, but they were on the way.
But if she wouldn't have done that,
She would be in Auschwitz. Yes. My auntie Reggie, we didn't know till after she died she had the numbers. She was in Auschwitz. And she lived in Haifa afterwards.
Your mother was a very brave lady.
My mother, oh, I can't tell you. And when we got to England eventually, she not only had lodgers, she used to iron for somebody, and she was a very, very active lady. And my father, unfortunately, because of the war and his sorrows, he was upset with us, we weren't there, he died very young. He died when he was 64. My mother, Alaiha Shalom, she came to England, she was from England, she came to Israel, and she was at my wedding, and the children. I have Kanina Horror, that's my husband. Yes, he was 75 then. But this is my husband, Joe Richman, very kind gentleman.
Claire, can I just ask you, when you were taken to the Red Cross,
Yes.
do you remember being taken there?
I remember being taken there, and I remember sleeping on the floor. And I remember my Auntie Gizzy, who was a sister of my mother, came to collect me because she lived in the ghetto and she heard I was in the Red Cross. So she came to collect me, and I had beautiful long black curls, but I was full of nits from the Red Cross. So eventually when my mother came back, my hair was cut. But my mother came back to Budapest, and everybody was so happy that she was came.
Do you remember seeing your mother again, that encounter?
No, I don't remember, but I remember she was always careful about me when the Russians came, when we were already out of the ghetto, and the Russians came and they wanted to take me on their horse. She wouldn't let me, she was frightened. But the Russians all had children, of course, and they liked children, but the horse was massive. Anyway.
Can I ask, from the Red Cross,
Yes.
when your aunt came to collect you,
me.
where did you go?
She took me to her flat, which was in the same building where the Fahirs lived. Now, I don't know what happened with the Fahirs. I think that Paul, Uncle Paul, was taken to the labour camp, but Vera was at home looking after her mother. Her mother was 90 odd. And, but we got together, you know, and then my mother came, and we were in this air raid shelter. It was a blind home, a very big, so the shelter downstairs in the cellar must have been 100 people.
Now this is when you went into hiding.
Yes.
And this is in 1944, near the end of the war?
Just before, when before the Russians came to liberate. And then the Russians came to Budapest and we were liberated.
So I just want to ask, when you went into the cellar, do you remember being in hiding?
Oh yes. I had Uncle Paul's mother, Auntie Francesca. She undid a jumper and she taught me how to knit. I must have been six, but no other children were there. But I remember in Kozintsiutsa, before we went into hiding, I remember there was a family, and the daughter was my friend. She was an opera singer in Budapest. A young girl, she became an opera singer, and I can't remember. Ava was her name, but I can't remember. Anything.
And Claire, were you able to speak Hungarian?
Yes, well, that was the only language I knew.
Not Yiddish or?
No, in our family nobody spoke Yiddish. I only learned Yiddish from my husband's family.
And Austrian? Could you speak a bit of Austrian?
No.
Or did anybody speak Austrian?
Nobody. I didn't speak, and I don't think my mother either. And then eventually, when we were reunited, my aunt and uncle and my father and mother, they spoke Austrian, and I understood a little bit.
So Claire, can I ask, when you were in hiding,
Yes.
what recollections do you have? Were you hungry, or did you have enough food?
Whilst I had my mother and Auntie Vera, the Fahir, she was with us. I was never hungry, never.
That's amazing.
My mother got bread from somewhere, and we had peas and beans, and I don't know why I eat it now, but I shouldn't. And that was good, and we were liberated, and we went for parcels, not from the a hiding place, but from Kozinci we went to the joint sent parcels from England. Was it Lasky or... Yeah, Lasky, somebody called Lasky. But I remember getting parcels.
And do you remember the liberation?
No, don't remember it at all. All I remember is that after the Russians were with us, we came out of the cellar.
Do you remember seeing the Russians?
Yes, I'm telling you, the Russians wanted to take me for a ride on the horse, and my mother was frightened. She said, no, no, no. And I didn't go. But yeah, it was okay. And then after the war, through the Red Cross, not the Red Cross, yes, it must have been, my father got in touch with us.
And during all this time, did you know what was happening with your father, or did your father know what was happening with you and your mother?
At first, yes. At first, yes. He knew that we were with Auntie Vera and Paul in Kozinci Utsa in Budapest, and then we lost contact for a good few years. So I didn't, I really didn't know my father at all until I came to England. And that was it.
And before the Russians came,
yes,
did you have to wear ever the yellow star?
Yes, but not in the cellar, not in
hiding.
Not in hiding. In Kozinci, I wore the yellow star.
You did wear the yellow star?
Yes, I wore that.
And were you scared to go outside?
I wasn't. I was too young to be scared. But from the air raid shelter, when we came out sometimes for fresh air, I could see bodies. Because from the bombing the night before, my mother, Aleha Shalom, and Auntie Vera, they knew which planes were bombing. They could tell by the sound, And, we were okay. I mean, we didn't eat, some of the people ate horse meat and whatever was going, but we didn't eat that. And I had peas and beans and potatoes. My mother could get potatoes, we had potatoes. And that was it.
And can I ask, from your mother's family,
yes,
or how many were actually deported?
Oh, two. This aunt that I used to call aunt, and she was really a cousin, she was in Auschwitz. She had the numbers. And then Auntie, what the heck was her name? Monsi, she was deported. She was only 18 at the time. She was deported. And who else? I think that was it. Auntie Reggie was in Auschwitz. And this is how the life went. My Auntie Gizzy, the one who took me out from the Red Cross, had a husband who, he was a Buxbaum from Eisenstadt, but she married him in Hungary, and they had a boy who never died. I was at the bris. He was I was 7 then. He had his bris, and this uncle Jeno was in Buchenwald. So I remember that. And he was an artist, and apparently he was good, but I don't know. But as I say, the Fahirs were wonderful people. But after my mother and I came to England, even before, I think, they became Geschmat. They didn't want to be Jews anymore.
Really?
Really. So it was a turnaround, because eventually they went to Australia, because Paul's brother was there already, and they had 2 children, Judith, Jutka and Marta. And Jutka came to see me in England with her new husband. It was wonderful. But in order to get married in a shul, because Judy's husband, Kingsley, was dati, as much as they could be. And Marty married a fellow, I didn't know her at all, married a fellow from Holland. But Kingsley, Jutka's husband, died 3 weeks before my husband. It's a long story, everybody involved,
And Claire, can I ask, when your mother found out or got a letter from your father
Yes.
that he's in England and he's alive,
She knew he was in England.
but that he was alive,
Yes.
you must have been very happy to hear that news as well.
Yes, and I was very happy, and we came in a Pan American aeroplane from.
In what year did you go to England?
I was.
Or how old were you?
I was 8.
You were 8.
Yes.
And you remember leaving?
I remember leaving Budapest, and I remember going in the aeroplane, and my poor mother was so sick, I can't tell you, but I remember that. And my aunt, Auntie Lena, that was my mother's sister, came to meet us in England, in London, and we went to some house where there were people from Eisenstadt. And then we came to Leeds, and I saw my father for the first time.
Wow. Your father couldn't come to meet you in the
No,
plane?
there was some reason why he couldn't come, but he wasn't a well man. But he was very happy that I was there,
So, Claire, I have to ask, how was that encounter? You hadn't seen your father for so...
I didn't know him, but I saw
it's more
a
than
picture.
6 years.
I saw this picture of my father. That I knew.
And this is a picture of you and your mom?
Yes, and we sent that picture to my father before we came.
This picture was taken in Budapest?
Budapest, yes.
How old are you in this picture?
I think, let me see, I'll tell you in a minute. I think I was 5. Yes.
And what do you recall of meeting your father? Was it emotional? Was it difficult?
I don't know. I tell you, my cousins, my aunt and uncles, we went to live at my aunt and uncle. She made room for us, and I had 2 cousins, both Ernest and Kurt, and they immediately treated me like a sister.
That's wonderful.
Because they didn't have a sister, and they had each other, and I was very well looked after, really. And then what happened, my father eventually got a job. He'd been in the Pioneer Corps, and also he was in, what's it called? I told you before, I've forgotten. I'll tell you who else was there. From 222, Donna, one of the brothers was in this home, in this Pioneer Corps. And it was, my father was good, but he suffered because he missed my mother and I.
And how did it's a difficult question, but how did your mother and your father, did they reconnect, or it must have been very difficult?
Very difficult for them. I can't remember. They were separated for so many years, 6 years, I think.
It's a long time.
Yeah, 5 or 6 years. But we lived at my aunt and uncle, who had a house in Leeds, and we went there because by then my aunt and uncle had a business. They finished with the domestic, and they had a business, and we lived with them until we got a house. And we got a house. I was naturalized very quickly because my father had been in the British Army. So very quickly it went. Before that, we used to go every month or every week to the police. We had to go with our passport, whatever. That I remember. And then I was naturalized very quickly because Daddy had been in the army. And yes, it was okay. and then I stayed in Budapest, and we came to England. But how did I remember going in the aeroplane, and my mother was very sick, and then we went to Leeds from London. The plane was in Heathrow, and we came to Leeds, and my aunt took me the next day to school.
Did you know any English?
No, very little. Maybe one or two words, and I don't know where I learned it. Maybe Auntie Vera.
And was it a Jewish school or a public school?
It was a Jewish school that I went to in Leeds.
And how did the kids...
Oh no, wait a minute. In Leeds, no. My aunt took me to a public school, and my cousins had been there before me. It was for both sexes, and they were very good. They were very, very good. And I had a friend, she only died last year. She came to live here, who was with me in the first day at school in England.
A Jewish girl?
No, that was not a Jewish school. But the nursery...
But your friend was Jewish?
My friend was Jewish. Her father was a Rav.
You remember her name?
Yes, Miriam Deitch. Her father was Rabbi Safa.
And you met her...
I met her in school, and the teacher sat me next to her. And she was very kind. She tried to teach me English. I learned English quickly, but I was in this school, and I can't remember what happened afterwards. I really can't. I don't even think about it.
And how long did you stay in Leeds? Did you stay for a long time?
I was there more than 50. I got married there.
Oh, yeah.
I got married when I was 18 to my husband.
And did your parents have any more children?
No.
So you were the only child?
I was the only child. I think from what the conversation, I think maybe she had a miscarriage after she was together with my father, but she didn't have more children.
And can I just ask, did your parents seem to be happy together?
Yes.
That's wonderful.
It was wonderful because my father could see what a wonderful mother he had, a good wife.
And he must have been, was he a wonderful, loving father to you?
He was, but he wasn't well. Already he wasn't well, and he was, as I say, he was 64 when he died. And my mum, Aleha Shalom, came to Israel with before me because she had sisters here. Oh, it's a long time since I've spoken, but I only remember a little bit, and I do remember after the bombing, when we used to come out of the air raid shelter in Hungaria, Kurut, I think it was called, we saw bodies. That I remember. And, they hadn't collected the bodies yet from the night before.
Did you ever go to the Danube?
Yes. No, we didn't. I went with my husband. No.
But when you were a
little girl, no.
And do you remember going to any of the shuls in Budapest?
Yes, I had a great uncle, my mother's uncle, and he took me, although I didn't know till afterwards, it was a neolog shul, Dohain, Dohain Street. There was a shul in Kozintsiutsa. I went to see it with my husband, but we went to see the Dohain Utsa shul, but it had been renovated already.
And did you go there as a child?
Yes. I went there Friday night with this great uncle.
And how, was it still very... I've been in that shul. Was it magnificent even?
No, it wasn't magnificent. It was already old. And then it took 7 years till they made it, and it's beautiful now.
But when the original...
When I was the original, it wasn't beautiful. And I remember the rabbi, he was on steps, you know?
Okay.
Yes.
And were there a lot of people in shul? I don't know if you can remember that.
No, I can't remember. But Friday night, this great uncle went every Friday night and he took me. Not Shabbat during the day, but at night he took me to the shul.
And Claire, did your family, with you and your mother and the people you stayed with, when it came to Pesach, did you manage to make a Seder?
No. I don't know how long we were with the Fahirs, but I can't remember that. I can't remember a Seder there
And
at
you
all.
remember a Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur?
I remember hearing about it, but I didn't go to shul, and my mother didn't, and I didn't go to shul till I came to England. So it wasn't an easy life.
And did your mother always remain traditional?
She did, because she came from a traditional home herself. And she had the sisters, and she had three brothers, and my uncles from my mother's side, they had children who were deported with my uncle's wives, would have been my age. It's terrible when I thought about it afterwards.
And they were deported to the camps?
Yes, not my uncles, but the aunts and the children. And my uncles, two uncles, were okay. One was in a labor camp, and the other one lived in Djur. He was a big leather man. He had a leather place. He used to had a shoe factory. My uncle Shonyi, Alexander he was called, Shonyi. My father's name was Alexander, but he was called Shandor. You know, in Hungary he was Shandor. But they came back, but their wives and the children were lost. And the children would have been my age. Yes.
And Claire, do you ever remember seeing any Germans in Budapest?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah, I do remember, yes, I do. But I wasn't frightened. I was too young to be frightened. I was too young. But I also remember where they used to round up the people, you know, and every tenth went to this side and the other went to that
you remember,
side.
Did you ever see it?
I saw when they were choosing the people, but it didn't register too much, you know. Afterwards, when I thought about it, I knew what was going on. Yes, that's how I knew. Anyway, as you say, but Baruch Hashem, I was reunited with my father and my aunt and uncle, and it was good. And these cousins were like brothers to me.
And Claire, when did you go back to Hungary? And Eisenstadt, you've been back to Eisenstadt?
Oh, yes.
When did you first go back?
The first time I went back with my husband, I think in 1950. I was already married, and we went back. I wanted to show him, and that's when we went to the cemetery and we cleaned stones to see where my father's parents were.
Was it difficult going back?
No, because to me it was like my husband was more upset than me. We went to Vienna from, he said he didn't like Vienna. He thought somebody was going to give him a knife. We only stayed one day in Vienna. Then we went to Eisenstadt, and we went to the Jewish Museum, and the curator was wonderful, and she showed me the house where I was born, this house. She said, you were born there, but she said, don't take pictures because they're watching. So all right, we didn't take pictures, but she showed us how to get to the cemetery, and we went and we saw my father's parents' graves. But then I was married, and I did have children in England. No, I had children in Israel.
And when did you first go back to Hungary?
I didn't go back.
You've never been back to Hungary?
Wait a minute. I must have been.
No,
yes,
you
I
did
was.
Go back because
you
went to the shul.
I went to the shul, and also I went to Kozinci Utsa where we lived. And when we went, I showed my husband, this is where I lived on the 3rd floor, but it was so derelict. It was held up with wood. It was already an old building. But Vera and Paul had already gone to Australia. They left in 1956. Oh, wait a minute. They left in 1956, so I must have been in Hungary after that. They went to Australia, and we always kept in touch. And she was a very clever lady. She wrote a booklet, and my mother and I were in it to say that we lived with them. It was very good. They were nice people. And as I say, they had 2 children after the war. They didn't want children during the war, and after the war, and that's when I met the daughter Judith. Jutka came to see me, and she was there, and we wanted her to come to my son's bar mitzvah, and she couldn't come. She was already, she was booked to go here, there. But very nice people, and her husband Kingsley died only 3 weeks before my husband.
And Claire, can I ask, when you were at school in Leeds,
Yes.
did you get on with the non-Jewish kids as well?
Yes.
Did you make friends with everyone?
Yes, we played together.
Did you ever have anti-Semitism? Or?
Not after the war, and not in where was I then? In Vietnam, no. Where was I? In England.
In England?
Yes, no, I didn't know anti-Semitism.
And did any of the kids, the girls, ask you about your origins or being in the war?
Nothing. But they all helped for me to speak Hungarian.
English?
English, yes. They all helped.
And you learned it very quickly?
Very quickly.
And I'd like to ask, Claire, your parents, were there other survivors that came to Leeds? Other Holocaust survivors?
I can't remember.
Or did your parents mix with...
Oh, only with the people who had been from Austria, from Vienna, before the war. They had a whole circle of these friends, and eventually they all died off, but they had a circle with these friends, and my aunt and uncle had a business. They made handbags, and there were all the Jewish women, smart women, used to come and buy bags there, have it made to the colour they wanted, and it was good. And their friends called Dixon, the firm, they also had a handbag factory, and they manufactured under the name of Lodux, and they sent a bag to the Queen.
Gee, wow.
Yes, they sent, and she accepted it. She sent a letter to say thank you.
Now, Claire, when did you come to Israel?
I can't remember.
But have you been here a long time?
Oh, yes. I was 50 years in Israel because I got married there. I went to school till I was a secretary to somebody after the school. But I got married when I was 18.
And you were married in Leeds?
Married in Leeds, in a shul.
And then did you stay in Leeds after that?
Yes, I stayed there because I had my golden wedding in the shul which we belonged to.
Wow.
And this photo was taken just after we came. My husband was 75 then, and it was for a bar mitzvah of my, can you see?
See. But are you happy that you came to Israel?
Yes, oh yes, because I was brought up to be a Zionist, and my husband always wanted to come to Israel. We lived in Leeds, and we mixed with Dati people who were, a lot of them, Bachad, old Bachadniks, and Torah Voda. I used to go to Torah Voda, and I was happy to come to Israel, very happy.
And Claire, did you speak to your children about your experiences in the Shoah?
Yes, but my son is a very clever boy. He's now, tomorrow is his birthday. He'll be 66 he'll be tomorrow. But he went to Carmel College, which was a Jewish school, and he was there, but he was more interested than my daughter. My daughter came on Aliyah, must be 33 years ago. She came after she'd been to university. She was with Bnei Akiva Garin, and she came to Israel. And then we came to Israel. We came a few times because she had 6 children. So every time she had a baby, I came. Anyway, they're all married. All her children are married. I'll show you a picture. A nice picture. This is her children.
That's wonderful. Okay, that is so lovely. Wow.
Okay, I bring it. This is my daughter's 6 children. The girl is, she's just been in Midrashah. She was in the army, and she, when she came out, she went to Midrashah.
You must be so proud.
I am. And the boy, Colin, is behind you. He's there. Look, that was taken on my 80th birthday already in Israel. Here.
This is so lovely.
I was 80 then, and this is my daughter and my son, and this is Kanina Horror. This is my daughter's family, and this is my son's family.
Wow, this is amazing.
It is.
Claire, it's incredible.
I know, I'm very lucky, and what's more, they are all Dati, which is unusual, because some children, like where Jack and Hazel's in Alumim, they lived there, but afterwards they didn't become Dati.
No, it can happen. But just think, Claire, that your mother took you in a rucksack to Budapest.
Yes.
If you would have stayed,
we'd be dead.
In Eisenstadt.
Oh, in Eisenstadt we couldn't have stayed, I don't think. But look, Kanina Horror.
That's wonderful.
It was. And this is my granddaughter with one of my great-grandchildren. Kanina Horror. I have 23 great-grandchildren.
It's wonderful. Claire, this is so wonderful. So Claire, Claire, all your life you kept your emunah, you kept your...
Yes, I did. I didn't know any other way to live, and I wouldn't. When I met my husband, his family were Dati, so of course I kept up, and we were Shul people in Leeds as well.
So your parents must have been very, very happy when you got married, to be at your
at my wedding.
At your wedding.
They came. My mother, Aleha Shalom, was alive when I had the first bar mitzvah, I think. But my mother came to Israel a few times and stayed with my daughter and son-in-law, and they were very happy. Here, I'll show you. 1 second.
These are such beautiful pictures.
Can I know? This is my daughter and my son-in-law, who was Israeli.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Okay?
Oh, these pictures are so beautiful.
I treasure it. Believe me, I treasure it. No, I was very fortunate. Okay.
And Claire, if I can ask you, I mean, it's so amazing. You have such a wonderful, happy, you're always smiling, and you've gone through a lot. I mean, you went through the Shoah, but look, you're so positive, and you.
But no, the worst part of my life was the last 12 years since my husband died. I was very happily married, and we had a happy life, and all our friends like Hazel and Jack and another couple, they came to Israel just before me, and we were friends, all our life.
How many years were you married?
I was married 55 years.
It's a big bracha.
Yes, it was a good blessing, and he was a very good man. Everybody loved him, and that's what. So since he died, he was going to be 83. So Claire thought, I make him a dinner party, but somehow I didn't get round to it. And he died on his 80th. I thought for his second bar mitzvah, I make a dinner party. No, he died on his 83rd birthday. But he was ill. When we came to Israel, he was already ill. He had cancer, and but we lived 4 years, and he was so happy.
It's a bracha to have a second bar mitzvah.
Yes. But he didn't, he didn't enjoy it because he was already ill. He had 4 years when we came to Israel when he had cancer. Please, can I make you a drink?
I just want to ask before, what message do you give? What message do you give to your children and grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and to the future generations?
Oh, I was very proud of my cousin, this cousin, who did such a lot with the school children. He told them about the Holocaust, although he hadn't lived in the Holocaust, but he was very well read, and he came with a kinder transport. But I was very proud of him because he did everything to show people. Now, my son, he's brilliant, he's a very clever boy. He's a lawyer, and but he went to Carmel College, and Rabbi Rosen, Jeremy at the time, that was the old Rabbi Rosen's son, was the headmaster, and my son was very happy. And when Prince Charles came, my son had the honor, Prince Charles came to Carmel College. It was an anniversary. My son had the honor to bench.
Oh, wonderful.
So that was lovely. And then, but my son was more interested than my daughter. My daughter went to Bnei Akiva, and she had all Dati friends. To this day she's friendly with some of them, and but she didn't know so much, whereas my son used to read a lot, and he knew all about the war and so on, so he was more interested. But then when my daughter got married to Hosea, and since then I found out that the Israelis weren't interested. They knew, all right, there was a war, but not as interested as my cousins were, because they were involved, So they were interested.
what's very interesting, Claire, you were offered when Spielberg did it was 30 years ago.
Long time ago.
But
yes.
you didn't want to do it
No.
at that time.
I said I don't remember a lot. And I pretended I didn't remember, but it came back to me because my mother never said anything. I knew things that weren't right, and the men went away, this one to Labour camp, and this one to Auschwitz, and this one to Buchenwald. I knew, but I didn't take notice, and I felt I couldn't tell Spielberg all these things.
But when you were growing up with your parents, did they speak about the war years?
No.
Or they never spoke about it?
No, never.
They put it behind them.
Yes. And maybe they spoke when I wasn't there amongst themselves because all their friends were from Vienna and so on. And they must have done. But not for me. I was always with my cousins, always.
And Claire, is this one of the first times that you've done it on a video, that
Yes.
you've related your story? It's the first time?
First time.
Well, Claire, I just want to thank you because this has been absolutely unbelievable. I just really, really want to thank you.
Thank you very
So,
much.
Claire, I must tell you, for me,
Yes.
this has been such an honor and a privilege, and I am so grateful to you.
Oh,
and
don't
Claire,
be
really,
grateful.
Claire, you are absolutely unbelievable. You are so amazing because you did go through a lot, and you have such a wonderful disposition. You're smiling, and
Yes.
and
Because I had a happy life, after the war, and when I came, even when my father wasn't well, I still had a happy life, and my mother gave me everything I needed.
You had incredible parents that sacrificed so much.
Very much, very much. And my husband looked after me, and he was 9 years older than me, and he looked after me, and we had a very happy marriage. And we were, just before we came to Israel, we made a kiddush in the Bet Knesset in England for our golden wedding.
It's wonderful.
And that was good.
So Claire, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm so grateful.
Yes.
And you should only have mazel bracha and nachas from your not only children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and maybe stream in good health and happiness and just all of Hashem's blessings.
Thank you.
And I'm very grateful to you, Claire. Really, I'm so grateful.
Oh, I'm so happy to have met you. What was your name? I didn't catch it.
It's
Doctor?
Les Glassman. Les Glassman.
Glassman. No.
Claire, this has been such a privilege and an honor, and you are just somebody we should all strive to emulate.
Oh, thank you very much. No, I have nothing to feel bad about when I look at the pictures of these are my grandchildren. I had 10 grandchildren, 6 in Israel and 4 in London. My son still lives in London. He's not retired yet, and he has grandchildren
Wonderful.
there, and they come often.
Well, this is the nachas.
Yes.
This is the real nachas.
I know, I always say Hashem did that. And I tell you another story which isn't so happy. One Erev Rosh Hashanah, I'm ringing my mother, and I'm ringing and no answer. So in the end, my husband came home, and I said, there's something the matter with Ima. Come, let's go. And we put me in the car, and we came. She was in, not that chair, that's from here. She was in my father's chair, and she was eating, she had a peach, and she died.
Oy.
But before she died, 3 weeks before, she'd been in Israel to my daughter. And the doctor came, we had a very nice doctor. She came home from Israel, and he came on the Wednesday, and on the Friday she died. So the doctor said to me, Claire, do not worry, your mother died like that.
She didn't suffer.
So she didn't suffer. So that was her reward for the good she did. Because not only was she good for me, she was good to everybody in the ghetto, whoever she could do for.
So, you know, Claire, this is basically maybe the message.
Yes.
That, you know, the kindness and the chesed.
Yes, is rewarded in her, it rewarded for her death. I mean, I kept saying, it's terrible, it was good for her to go like that, but it was bad for me because I was the only one. My husband was with me when we found her, but the doctor came and he said, Claire, I came on Wednesday and Emma was fine, and he said she must have gone like that.
Well, look at your mother in this picture.
Yes.
She was smiling, and you know, your mother's smiling from above.
She was, and she's smiling from above.
Right now, she's...
I told somebody the other day, oh, my metapelet, I said, you know, because she was singing to me. She's from the Philippines, and she was singing Spanish. So I said, where did you get that song? She said her mother used to sing. So I said, my mother, Alaiha Shalom, when she was in the kitchen, she used to sing. Always happy.
So here we're just going to, this is your dear father who is also, I mean, for him to go to England to try and get papers for you,
yes,
it was a big sacrifice.
He did, he got
and then
papers.
he did eventually as well.
Yeah.
And this is, and Claire, I just want to mention one little part which, you know, when your father was in England, he didn't know that you and your mother were alive.
He knew that we were in Budapest, but he didn't know that we were alive. Maybe 3 years during that time, he didn't know.
But I'm sure he kept hoping and praying.
Oh yes,
and
they tried through the Red Cross to get in touch.
So that
and that's
reunion...
how eventually he got in touch, and we had immediately an aeroplane and to England.
It's incredible. Your story and your life story is just amazing.
Let me
Claire,
make
thank you so
something.
much, Claire. I so appreciate it.
I appreciate having to tell you because it's brought back a lot of memories, and as I say, I have nothing but nice memories from my family.
Thank you so much, Claire.
What